Where I was born, drinking tea has been a big part of the development of Chinese culture. It is a sign of respect to serve someone tea. And it's filled with meaning, all leading to the harmonious unity of human beings with nature. In China, the meaning of being invited to tea has changed drastically. I learned that when, because of me, my father received an invitation to tea from the state security forces. And it wasn't an invitation that he had the freedom to turn down. My journey to this day has been such a roller coaster ride. If you tell me 2 years ago I'm going to be facing the situation I'm facing, I wouldn't believe it. It sounds like a movie.
Her father was receiving threats as a result of her outspokenness against human rights abuses in China.
I was trying to advocate.
Millions have been imprisoned, tortured, and sexually assaulted.
It is possible to stand against tyranny.
My mom was really scared at the beginning.
She's putting her family on the line.
Her own life is at risk.
My father was threatened.
This is intimidation. I put him in danger.
My cell phone is monitored.
Miss World never got back to me. Do not allow to board.
There's one contestant missing from the event.
I had been barred from boarding a flight. Ask the Chinese government why is it afraid to let in a beauty queen? Not being allowed into China has turned out to be the most interesting experience of my life. Let me start at the beginning. I was born in China, in Hunan province. I was a model student, raised by one of those Asian tiger moms you have all heard about.
I trained her use Chinese traditional way when she was a child. She's very smart and also have a very good memory.
I started studying calligraphy and piano when I was 2, and was a student council president in my middle school. When I was little, I think the government in China was the only moral authority. I didn't question it. It feels like that their interest must be, public interest. It must be for the people, as they say in the songs that we learned in elementary school and kindergartens. Communist is closer to you than your own parents. And probably the teacher who taught those songs wasn't even aware that it's a form of brainwashing. I hate to admit that I have been brainwashed before. It makes one sound so indignified and stupid, but the fact is the fact. One of the things I did as a student leader was to make my classmates watch hatred propaganda films attacking the so-called government enemy and enforce ideological conformity.
It's a society, to some extent, built on fear. That's the construction. It's not built on the idea that you have to control your thoughts. It's what you say. A great scholar once compared it to the anaconda in the chandelier. In other words, a great snake that sits there in the middle of a glittering ballroom, and it's ready to strike at any time. The snake is not going to necessarily kill you. The point is, you decide. They are self-censoring. This is a much more efficient system.
The fact that Chinese government taught that they are more important than your own parents is completely against traditional culture. That's why Chinese traditional culture, Confucius value, Buddhist or Taoist is ideological competition to the Chinese Communist Party, and that's why they tried their hardest to destroy all of it during the Cultural Revolution. Even decades after the Cultural Revolution, there's still a lot of those things in the education system. My father is still in China. He always teach me that if you're gonna be like a good person, you gotta be like useful to the society. You gotta contribute. You have to contribute. My father grew up in the middle of Cultural Revolution. He always said that Communist Party is the best. I honestly don't know if my dad believes what he says, because right now, for me, that sounds really stupid. I don't want to say that about my dad, but it is really stupid. And my dad is a really smart man. He has a PhD, but it hurts me to think that at one time he believed all of this.
When she first came over to the West, she was a Chinese nationalist, and she didn't want to listen to Western lies. The people who you admire the most are the ones who are willing to change their minds based on the evidence, and that is Anastasia Lin. So it all changed for me when I came to Canada when I was 13 years old. My mom, she sort of challenged me with different, ideas, and she wanted me to start to use my own mind instead of believing what the government said. That's when I started to realize the stuff I learned in China are not necessarily true. This is the first time I peeled a beet. Okay. My mom left China because she wanted a better education for me. She knows how stifling the education in China is. I felt like she has been preparing me to leave China at a very young age, especially after my parents' divorce. I was 14 years old when my mom gave me a little booklet that was actually written by a Falun Gong practitioner. And it told a completely different story. That was her way of telling me, don't be a little commie here in the West. Open up your eyes. And I checked out their story online, and it seemed to be really different from what I heard in China. So I read more about it, and they're just like a yoga practice that's reminiscent of Buddhist teaching. I was shocked. I did more research about the persecution of Falun Gong, of Tibetans, of Uyghurs, and also democratic movement. And the more research I did, the truth, the whole picture just got uglier and uglier. I didn't know what to believe anymore. I continued with school and eventually went to university to study acting. I was approached by a filmmaker, and he said that he was having a problem finding Chinese actresses who would be willing to act in projects that tell story about human rights violations in China. As part of my research, I met with a lot of survivors, real human rights victims. It was heartbreaking, and it really opened my eyes. And I sure didn't know how to do anything about it. But I started to learn what I could do from a beauty queen. I met Anastasia Lin, Miss World Canada 2003, in a human rights assembly. She's an Iranian human rights activist. She had this glow on her, and everyone was listening to her so attentively. I guess that's when the seed was planted, that one day I want to be a beauty queen like her, and speaking about important issues.
She had asked me how she could advance her cause, condemning the Chinese Communist Party for their human rights abuses. And she was an attractive young lady, intelligent. I told her Miss World might be her ticket to advancing her mission because of their motto, beauty with a purpose.
Eventually, I worked up the courage. Didn't tell my parents. I submitted an application to Miss World Canada, and I was selected as a finalist in the national pageant.
A university student, actress, and human rights activist. At 23 years old, Chinese-born Anastasia Lin is taking on yet another challenge, Miss World Canada 2013. But it's not just the title she's after.
My platform is religious freedom. Although I only got second runner-up, I made a lot of good friends. I was a little disappointed, but I started to see how this pageant thing is going to be a great way to get my voice heard.
Well, we first got to know Anastasia right after the first time that she competed in the Miss World Canada pageant. She was a university student and she was doing a summer internship.
We said, well, we have a guest room, why don't you come live with us?
We have a mutual interest in China, human rights. I studied Chinese history, politics, and foreign affairs, and researched the persecution of Falun Gong quite a lot. So we had that in common. The way that she expressed that passion was through her films, in which she played these roles, and she would sometimes sort of sit down and interview people who had lived through the kinds of experiences that she was depicting. She always insists, I'm an actress, not a subject matter expert.
I still wanted to use the pageant system to be a voice for people suffering in China. So in 2015, I entered again. And this time, I am going with a completely different mentality. Of course, there's loads of preparation, like, of course, getting my nails done is one. And dresses. I need dresses. Because like for the entire beauty pageant, you need more than one dress. Like a gazillion cocktail dresses and 3 evening gowns at least. It's really crazy and I have to lose weight. So from today on, I'm not gonna eat. I'm nervous, but really excited.
Good, hand right up and rest.
I have no idea what's gonna happen. So.
I was born in a repressive country. I've been working to advocate for human rights cause, especially religious freedom. So I believe that I should use my liberty to advocate for theirs. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, ladies. So when you're standing up there and they start calling names, third runner-up, second runner-up, when I get to first runner-up, that's when you don't want to hear your name. And they called the other girl's name, and I was like,
ladies and gentlemen, your Miss World Canada 2015 is Anastasia Lin.
I was like, this is wow. And my mind did go blank. I'm Miss World Canada. And then she placed the crown on my head. I felt this very warm energy from top down. And I was like, this is real.
I felt like this huge door behind me closed, and there's this door in front of me that opened. It's like a new journey. I just felt this huge responsibility, this huge weight that dropped on my shoulder. My platform, speaking out for freedom of thought in China, was what got me here, and I need to live up to it. First, when I won the crown, the whole Chinese media was thrilled about it. My dad told me that there were TV station and newspaper back in my hometown that wanted to interview him. There was news on the internet, a lot of it. And then I think that they started to do some digging and find that, oops, maybe she's not what we really want to promote. It became clear very fast that the Chinese government just wanted me to shut up and stop talking about their human rights violations. And they were pressuring my dad to make it happen.
然后父亲跟我说，就是国安过来找我们家说，如果我再继续说话的话，就会把我们家弄得像文革一样，父不认子，子不认父。然后我问爸爸有什么事情这么严重，然后他说你给我们国内的人留条活路吧。我当时听了，心都碎了。
When she first heard about her father, she was panicked, didn't know what to do. The other thing too was that made it so bad was she was on such a high.
Yeah.
She had just won this pageant that she had wanted to win for years. And she had the pride of her father and the whole town. And then in a flash, it was totally different. her father couldn't talk to her. She felt like what she had done, this great thing, could have been a horrible thing.
Like Chinese people even have the saying now. Being invited to tea, it basically means when they call you up and probably threaten you if you don't be quiet or your family don't be quiet, God knows what they are gonna do. I don't know what they told my father. It has nothing to do with him. Doesn't matter if I say something right or wrong, it has nothing to do with other people. He's been my support throughout my life. And he was that safety blanket that made me feel like nothing is really gonna go wrong ever, because he's there.
Almost immediately after she learns that her father was visited by state security agents in China, she finds out that the pageant, which was supposed to be in Australia, has been relocated to Sanya, China, which has essentially become the default venue now for the Miss World pageants. I think she thought that there was an element of fate in that. She was convinced that she was going to get to go to China and that she was going to have this platform to speak directly to the Chinese people. And we were really skeptical, but she believed deep in her heart that this was her destiny.
I really wasn't that worried about it because it's an international competition. I mean, if China is going to host the international competition, of course it's expected that they will let all the international contestants in. Or otherwise, like, how bad does it look?
When I found out that she didn't get the invitation to go to China, I had to do something to somehow make it work. So I started communicating with the Miss World organization to get Anastasia accepted. I was not getting any responses from them. And then we tried to contact the Minister of Foreign Affairs in China, and we wouldn't get any response from there either. And I was very saddened because to see Anastasia trying everything and preparing herself for these big finals, and she couldn't get there.
I know what they want from me. They want a big public apology. That's how they operate. There's this like K-pop star in Taiwan. She was waving like a Taiwanese flag on TV or something, and the Chinese government got so upset at her. And like the next thing you know, she was bowing on the internet. They're not getting apologies from me. The only time that bows want to work out.
What brought the Globe and Mail to this equation was that we had been hearing about these issues with Chinese Canadians as a result of things they would say here on Canadian soil. Anastasia's story was interesting because her father, as we well know, according to her, was receiving threats. That was very difficult to verify. We couldn't phone the father and say, are you suffering as a result of what your daughter has said? We couldn't call him at all. We had to take her on trust. That was an issue. But there's so many similar anecdotes that I've heard in the course of reporting over almost 2 years in the community that it seemed within the realm of reason. Anastasia would often talk to me about her conflict, which was, should I speak out more and bring more attention to this issue, or should I refrain and protect my father? And it's an unenviable dilemma, obviously. I think ultimately what she decided was that she had to speak out louder, that the more visible a target she may have become, the more, ironically, the more protected she would become. That's a very big risk.
I would say generally that the relatives in China of people abroad who are of interest to the government of China are in danger from the government of China. I see this for Anastasia Lin's family, but I see it for lots of families. This is a typical way in which the Chinese government reacts to try to get its way. So I would say that definitely somebody like Anastasia Lin would be in danger.
My mom was really scared at the beginning with everything that was going on, and she felt like I was making the worst decision in my life by telling the public about it. And then after she came to my graduation in June, we had a very frank talk, because we can't really talk freely on the phone. Even in Canada, my phone might be tapped. So I went out for a morning run with her, and I told her what my thoughts are and what I wanted to do. And I think she understood. For me, speaking up turned out to be writing something for a big American newspaper. I wrote to the Washington Post editor, and they replied saying that, asking me if I wanted to write an op-ed. My father was never so proud of me as when I was crowned Miss World Canada. Now, just a few weeks after I was crowned, my father is afraid to speak to me. No doubt fearing for his livelihood and business, my father asked me to stop advocating. He told me that if I don't stop, we would have to go our separate ways. Leaving China doesn't make one free. Not when friends and family there become hostages. Freedom comes when we stop accepting tyranny.
What I respected about her was that she was doing something that I wasn't doing. I don't put myself on the line when I write about these issues. I do not put my family on the line. Anastasia's putting herself on the line, she's putting her family on the line. This is a real sacrifice. When somebody does that, when they stand up like this, and they're Chinese, China does not take kindly to it. It's almost racial. It's like, you're one of us. You do what we say. The fact that Anastasia stands up to that, yeah, I respect that. She's one of the few people I'd really use that word, courageous. This was not some sort of publicity stunt.
Since my op-ed was published on the Washington Post, I've been invited to speak at the American Congress. I wouldn't use the word horrified, but I was a little frightened.
We now turn to Ms. Lin for her testimony.
As soon as I was asked to speak,
My name is Anastasia
I felt
Lin.
this
I am a Canadian
overwhelming
actress. I'll be representing
power
Canada at the
that
2015
sort of
Miss World
supported me
Competition in San Diego.
to speak the truth.
That is my hope.
It was something that I don't think I've ever experienced before. It's like you know that you're doing the right thing at exactly the right moment and place.
It's a shock to realize that the man who made you feel safe is in danger. I had to choose between silence and my hope for a better China.
I think it's amazing, and it'll be shocking to a lot of Americans to know there are people living in this country, perhaps American citizens, who are being extorted and or blackmailed through the safety or security of their own relatives back in China.
This is the regime's policy of guilt by association. And this is why my father was threatened by the security forces. Never mind that I am a Canadian citizen, upholding Canadian values on the other side of the world.
She came over one night, and I mentioned to her that Sanya has special visa requirements, and the nationals of certain countries are able to go without getting a visa in advance, and they can apply for a landing visa on arrival. She lit up. She was so excited that this was an option.
Let's send someone with you, both as, you know, someone to help you through what's going to be a crazy time, and also maybe to document what's going on over there.
Got to Jared and Kaylin's, walked in, and saw Anastasia sitting on a couch.
And I think it was at that point that I thought, this is gonna be a story. So I grabbed my camera, we started immediately just working through what's it gonna take to get there, and what's this whole thing gonna look like.
So we thought I might just go.
Like tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It was pretty crazy, I will tell you. So the plan was to pose as a tourist with the camera around my neck, hit record to capture whatever I could. I think everyone was fully aware of, you know, the potential risks.
We were trying to figure out what would she need once she got there, and we were thinking she needs a burner phone, she needs a new laptop, sort out hotel logistics for her, and she was just, I think she just went home and she's
dress,
like,
makeup, all of the things that she needed to actually compete, because that was her plan the whole time, was I'm going there to compete.
I gave Kaylin and Jared a list of contacts for reporters that have been calling me for weeks to find out if I got the visa or not. The plan was if I got in trouble, they would call the press and give them the story. These are my favorite everyday shoes. It's like they're so comfortable, you can run in them. In case if I have to run from the Chinese police, I'd go for these ones. Okay, awesome. I'm nervous. I'm really nervous. Our flight was to Hong Kong, then a connecting flight to Sanya.
Unbeknownst to me, she took this secret flight to Hong Kong.
I have all these voice messages from Craig Hoffman with the Globe and Mail.
I've learned from the Chinese embassy that she is non grata in China.
And finally I call him back and he says, "Where's Anastasia?" Her phone's being answered by someone else. And we said, "Oh, Craig."
Suddenly I got the tingle and I realized, no, she is not.
Anastasia is en route to China.
This looked like a colossal mess. She's going right into the eye of the hurricane.
When we landed, I got a text message from Kaylin.
At that point, she had found out that she was persona non grata.
But after flying for 18 hours, I was not gonna give up.
I was certainly worried.
And all sorts of thoughts started rifling through my head.
They could detain her, interrogate her, at a minimum that they would try to get intelligence out of her.
China does not recognize a second passport. She crosses the border, she is Chinese property.
The threat that she faced was genuine.
We're told that we needed clearance from Sanya in order to board.
We had went to try and do an early check-in. They said, please come back. We came back maybe an hour later. They said, I'm sorry, we're still having issues. They ultimately give her a cell phone, and it's the Sanya authorities on the cell phone.
Not able to apply for a visa on landing in Sanya. Do not allow to board.
Thank you.
Let's get out of here.
Okay. Now we have no idea what's going to happen.
那么中共肯定是不喜欢这个。
My story is only the tip of the iceberg. It reflects a much larger picture.
He said no, and he hung up the phone after.
I would like to ask you, as members of the media, to press for answers.
Denied a visa by China after publicly criticizing that country's human rights record.
There's one contestant missing from the event, and that would be Miss World Canada.
She's been stopped from traveling within China to take part in the pageant.
When I was in Hong Kong, I was really depressed. I was like frightened because I knew the entire world was watching me. I kept trying to reach out to the Miss World organization. I kept hoping that they could do something to help me get to Sanya. Part of me really just want to go home.
The Miss World organization wasn't really doing much to support her. I think, obviously they have business connections in Sanya. They're self-interested not to jeopardize those.
And to not have a comment come at any level from the Miss World organization, I think was a huge disappointment.
I tried everything to communicate with the Miss World organization, and she did too, but we couldn't get any response. Of course, I expected the Miss World organization to play an important role because this is their job.
It was about 7 days before I gave up and decided it was time to go home.
So we landed and started exiting. Anastasia walked ahead of me, and all I heard was screaming and yelling. There was media there. There were a lot of fans holding up posters, showing their support. You can see the look on her face. She was just really touched and moved. After coming off a really sort of lonely and tough run.
I didn't expect this to become an international incident, that's for sure.
was surprised by how many people that came. I was like,
I was pushing the luggage. I just heard people cheering. I was like, what the heck is going on?
yeah, support is overwhelming. The support is really overwhelming, every different level. So we'll see how the day goes tomorrow, and looking forward to talk to Canadian media live.
You had said that you were disappointed that this new government, new Liberal government, didn't stand up for you. And we got a statement in part from Global Affairs Canada. I just want to read in part what it said. It is the sole prerogative of every country or territory to determine who is allowed to enter and who is allowed to exit. So basically saying it's up to China.
Tonight, the director and executive producer of my last film, The Bleeding Edge, are hosting a big event for me to meet the press. I guess by not getting into China, it's brought more attention to the way China operates. I don't know. I'm just really confused. I feel awful if my family is suffering for it. And I feel unjust when people think that I'm just this hero, like this human rights advocate. I don't have any fear. And they think that I'm just this girl who's supposed to do this, and this is my mission. No, there's not a single human being in the world who's supposed to defend human rights as their job. It's everybody's job. So I went to my dress sponsor yesterday to pick up the dress for today's event. And I was told by one of the employees that they can't sponsor me anymore because the Chinese consulate wrote a letter to the owner saying that I'm bad news. I should be stayed away from. And I might get into trouble for that, for keep sponsoring me. So I don't have dresses for the rest of the year from them. Oh, well, 1 second. I'm going to take off my braces. Yeah, I know. Yeah. China's #1 public enemy still have braces.
I'm very upset about it, actually. That a Canadian company in Canada would deny of dressing her because of Chinese government. It doesn't seem modern.
This is great.
Isn't it gorgeous?
Yeah. I like this one.
Okay.
Whoa, yeah, that's beautiful.
I think you look absolutely stunning.
Ladies and gentlemen, the beauty queen the world cannot stop talking about, Miss World Canada, Anastasia Lin.
Tonight, I am going to play a piece on the piano, a piece that I was going to play in the Miss World final in China. This piece was sung to me by a victim of abuse. She had been through a lot in China, and still she had this peace and kindness in her heart.
It shows you how weak is the Chinese regime, with all its army, with all its satellite, with all its economic, is scared from a small little beauty queen.
I see her as somebody who has a strong principle. I was deeply touched by her courage.
She takes the fame and the attention she gets with a lot of responsibility. She wants to be able to do something good with it.
Well, she certainly changed the image of beauty queen, and I'm very impressed by the strength and the poise.
History has clearly shown that those people who stood up against adversity, even though they end up sometimes battered and bruised, the fact of the matter is they weren't wrong. They were just ahead of their time.
I guess I never really had a chance to reflect on the experience. I never had a chance to think about how, thank you, how tough it actually was. Yeah, and when I started to talk, I was like totally went off script too. It was good. I want to eat more ice cream. This is the first time my mom ever listened to me speak in public, and she wasn't really sure what she was getting into, like what she was gonna hear. She actually asked me, what exactly is this event and what are we talking about here?
I am proud of her. She's very confident. She tells the truth.
When I think about the fact that she's a 25-year-old woman coming here to Washington, D.C., speaking before a nationally televised audience in the same venue that everyone from the President of the United States to the President of Turkey to any number of entertainers over the years, I can understand why it would be pretty shocking to her.
They have seen how hard the communist government makes it for people to be true to themselves, stay true to their own conviction, and to maintain integrity. It feels so unnatural when the camera is on. It's like I want to hide my face. Today, I should be in Sanya, China, representing my country, Canada, in the Miss World final. I have to be honest here, I am afraid. But as I reflected on what to do, it becomes clear that I cannot give into fear.
Well, our speaker today, probably in her heart of hearts, would prefer not to be here. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a warm National Press Club welcome to Miss World Canada, Anastasia Lin.
Today, I'm supposed to be in Sanya, China, but I find out that I have been declared persona non grata by the Chinese government. Persona non grata, I had to look it up on Wikipedia. I think the Chinese government was just going to pretend that I didn't exist and hoped I would just simply go away. It is also not just about millions of Chinese immigrants would feel safe and free in their adopted countries without having to worry that our family members are going to be threatened back home. It's about whether countries around the world who deals with China are willing to defend the very principles that animate their own societies. The Chinese government continues to do these things because the international community continues to allow them to. Together, we can prove to the Chinese Communist Party that our free world's most treasured beliefs are not for sale. Dear member of the press, thank you very much for your attention and your interest in my story. Your voices have supported me throughout my journey since half a year ago when my father was first intimidated. Thank you very much.
What other things do you see yourself doing in your future? And would you ever consider a career in politics in Canada?
I am an actress, so I would like to take it as far as I can. But if I have my American history right, you're open to have an actor running for your highest office, right?
You were quoted in the New York Times recently as saying that officials in the Miss World pageant have offered to allow you to compete in next year's finals. Do you plan to accept this offer?
I'm still thinking about it. Still thinking about it. It was such a relief for me to know that my mother understood what I was trying to do. And I think after she listened to my speech, she really understood. Her attitude changed.
I was just congratulating your mother on her bravery.
Oh, I did, thank you. I was blown away when the press club asked me for a photo. Their walls are covered by people like Mother Theresa and Princess Diana and every US president since I don't know when. and now a little badass beauty queen.
In today's China, when somebody is somewhat public, you often will not arrest them. What you will do is simply remove their economic viability, just simply destroy it.
On the phone, he never speak about these things. He says that he's going through a very difficult time, and I've heard that he probably can't come out of China. Of course, it's related to my speaking out. My father and all those people related to me actually are very, very vulnerable. This is threat. This is intimidation. This is a state acting like gangster. This journey has taken me to all corners of the world.
今年11月到12月
Hope is way more powerful than fear. What is China doing on the Human Rights Council in UN? While I'm going around the world, I am also training for my Miss World competition. Respectful, dignified. If there are any reasonable grounds to believe that forced labor is part of a company's Chinese supply chain, shouldn't it stop sourcing product from that country? Invited me twice to the parliament to testify on human rights abuses in China.
Good.
Comparing to speaking to politicians and human rights activists, this is harder. People just think that, oh, beauty queens are just born. That's not true. And probably the only beauty queen in history that has ever been declared persona non grata by any country.
The most extraordinary and shocking form of human rights abuse that's happening in my native country, China, today, the organ harvesting.
Well, it was really cool to meet the Dalai Lama. So the question I asked the Dalai Lama was, I'm just really surprised at the indifference and the fear Chinese people have exhibited. He thinks that the way to cure that is through education, educating people's nature, human nature. Education. Maybe I'm interpreting the word wrong. Maybe he meant awakening people's conscience? I don't know. Still thinking.
You know, I work hard for this pageant. I don't want to just let the chance go.
Miss World organization, I assume, was kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. Anastasia is probably the most famous person competing in this pageant. Let's assume, give them the benefit of the doubt, and their assumption would be, we can finesse this. We'll give her a certain amount of face and visibility, and in return, we'll show that Miss World is not corrupted and we're fair.
The cynical perspective would be that they were trying to avoid negative publicity.
So this is my second go at Miss World, and this time I'm picking a platform that's perhaps more sensitive. Forced organ harvesting means taking someone's organ when they're still alive and sell the organ for transplant for money. And the victims of this abuse are usually prisoners of conscience.
Her platform had always been a little bit more generic, and I think she decided that this time the stakes were higher. It's totally unlike the kind of platforms that other beauty pageants would take. Organ harvesting is about as controversial and as sensitive as you can get.
A year ago, I would have said, boy, that's a really, really dangerous choice. Now I wouldn't really fully say that. The fact is, in the newspapers, this has become quite reported on. And that's another thing that I think the Chinese are particularly worried about. You might even say there's a kind of missing generation in China at this point, of people sort of 30 to 40 at a certain level in certain provinces where they've really just disappeared. You know, we're going to be dealing with this for a long time.
All I'm trying to do is to present the facts to everyone. People can make their own judgment. In a few weeks, this beauty queen is going to stand on a stage in Washington, D.C., and her platform is not going to be world peace. It's going to be organ harvesting.
Fate is sort of funny. You know that every single time the Chinese government tried to take something away from me, something better has come from it. They prevented my dress supplier from working with me, and now Stephen Karras and his son Kyriako are doing dresses for me.
What we see is a woman who needs help, and she needs to express herself the way she wants to. And that's what we're trying to help. My belief is it's all about chemistry. The person has to kind of blend, and you see here, wow, I mean, look at this now. Our objective here is to make you feel like a swan walking on clouds. That's how you're gonna feel.
I feel like Cinderella. The truth is, if I lose the spotlight, anything can happen to my dad any day. And I won't have the power to do something about it. Like, let's say if they arrest my father tomorrow, and what do? If I have been out of the media for so long, if no one's listening to me, then who do I get to, like, what leverage do I have to keep my father safe? I don't have anything. This is about survival.
She's always trying to figure out how she can do more, how can she have a greater impact than she's already had. And she's never satisfied, right? But yeah, she's definitely had to grow up very, very quickly.
I'm going to Washington, D.C. And I'm sure this time I won't have a problem getting into the country.
It's honestly not intrusive at all that a TV crew is following me everywhere and recording my life. I feel like this is, actually twice now, in a lifetime thing. All this are essentials. I can't live without them. I was traveling with my crown and sash, and the airport security was like, what is that round metal thing? And they took it out, and it's like a crown. They're like, why are you carrying a crown? I'm a beauty queen, that's my job. I'm carrying my uniform. And they just let me go. I'm sorry, I'm being really silly today. This is my beauty queen brain stage. Okay.
Well, once Anastasia signed on for round 2, the Miss World organization pretty much put a naval blockade around her.
Before I enter the competition, I have to sign a contract that I cannot speak to the press without permission.
She was very adamant from the beginning that the rules that she and the other contestants have agreed to require her to get permission. So I sent a message explaining I'm a columnist for the Boston Globe. No response. This total silence, that was a new one for me. Not only did they deny the media access, they don't even acknowledge the request.
Ethically, I think it's been difficult for her to stay there because she feels like if I'm not speaking, if I'm not getting my message out, what am I doing here? What is this all for?
I directed it all to Miss World. I went out to the Miss World office and told them that there has been a lot of media inquiry. When you don't respond to them, they will write with or without you.
It's sort of ironic, isn't it? Because the Chinese government has, I think, tried quite hard to get her to be quiet on these issues. And now it seems that the organization that she thought was giving her a platform to speak, that they also don't seem to want her to speak about these issues.
I didn't see that it was my obligation to wait for the Miss World organization to finally get around to acknowledging requests. So I told Anastasia that I was going to fly down to Washington.
I went up to them and say, like, they are sending a reporter here. You need to give me, like, an answer. They didn't respond. So Jeff arrived in the lobby.
Wandered around a bit, and then I noticed, this young woman in a tracksuit
walked up and introduced myself.
And then I insisted that we sit in the very open lobby area in front of the elevator so that I'm not hiding anything. I'm doing everything by the book.
I actually thought it would be easier if we would just leave the hotel. She was quite insistent. She wanted to abide by the rules. Somebody from the Miss World staff walks by, gives us kind of the hairy eyeball.
He was like, Canada, why are you talking to this person?
And I was on the point of saying something meant to be disarming. She immediately cut me off.
I said, this is a journalist from Boston Globe.
And as soon as this guy heard some reference to the media, it was as though he had gone to DEFCON 4.
And he immediately called other people to come.
I mean, I was expecting a file of Marines.
Miss Canada is here with a journalist.
2 more people step off the elevator.
The look on their face was like, I've done something horrible. I'm like, I told you as soon as I land that there's going to be a Boston Globe journalist coming on Monday. You can't just say that I didn't tell you.
And at some point, they kind of maneuver Anastasia over closer toward the elevator. One of the 2 is questioning me. And I explained all this and said, your people don't respond to phone calls or emails. I do remember hearing her say very indignantly, I am not lying.
I'm freaking telling the truth.
Last thing I saw was that she was, hustled onto the elevator.
And so they said, you can be disqualified for this. We'll notify Julia Morley and we'll let you know the decision in the morning. I was really scared because I thought they were really going to disqualify me for something like this. And on the second day,
Went back to my hotel. I sent her a note and said, that was really outrageous, and I assure you, you're going to have the last word. She was going back and forth between, on the one hand, not wanting to rock a boat, and on the other hand, not wanting to be silenced. My first column appeared about 2 weeks before the pageant final. I had wanted all along to focus it on the films, both the documentary, Human Harvest, and the drama, The Bleeding Edge. And there was going to be a premiere of her movie, was going to take place in Washington during the pageant. Now that I understood that there was never going to be any official granting of permission, I had to think about how to write the column so that there would be no excuse for the organizers of the pageant to say, look at this column, it broke the rules. Nothing in that column did break the rules.
She called me one day. She was a wreck, almost incoherent. Her dad's been coming under increasing pressure. All aspects of his life that seemed to be being systematically dismantled.
The fact that Anastasia was hearing from her father right in the middle of this thing where she's contractually obliged to be quiet, that can't be a coincidence.
it was really the most frightening experience. Things are actually a lot worse.
Then Anna found out that some other contestants had been able to do interviews with the media.
There's a Chinese journalist there who's pointing like a camera at us all the time. And we had mandatory interviews with this journalist. I asked Miss World officials why they allow a Chinese journalist in, but none of the Western journalists got any reply. And they were saying, oh, they are our media partner. And then one day, Miss Germany showed me a video. She's like, hey, Canada, I did an interview on German TV. And I was like, did you get permission? And she's like, of course I asked permission. And I got it. And I was like, okay, now there's something weird.
Why were they being given permission and she wasn't? And that, on top of what was happening to her father, sent me back to my editor saying, you know what, I think I've got a second column that I want to do here. She's being silenced, and if it wasn't crystal clear when I went the first time, it's certainly clear now what has taken place.
Wall Street Journal first can't hold it anymore. And then New York Times.
And then in the space of 36 hours, there was just this tremendous avalanche of attention.
After I have been holding Jeff, don't write anything for so long, it's his story.
And I laid out exactly what had happened. And once again, we were seeing a repeat of what had happened a year earlier. Those who tried to stifle her ended up seeing their efforts backfire. The difference is that in 2015, it was the Chinese government. Very different was this year when it was the Miss World organization incorporated in the United Kingdom. In Washington, D.C., which I think we can still call the capital of the free world, the UK chartered Miss World organization is going to keep her from speaking. That I thought was just unbelievable.
She's brought also attention to another issue, which is what happens when China gets involved with anything. They corrupt it. Reforming pageants is not going to be the big thing I'm going to be writing my next book about, okay? But is it important for people to see how corruption works? Yeah, that's absolutely essential.
When I read the news reports about what's happening now, that it seems that Anastasia is kind of being muzzled, can we say, to some degree, I think that what a reporter would have to do to look at this and examine it the right way is follow the money. Where's the money coming from that funds the pageant, and does that have any influence on what's happening now?
Magically, after that 3 articles, Miss World set up a press office.
I want the people to see me on that show. I want them to see that I have not given up. I want them to see my face, and I want my dad to see my face.
When so many international organizations were writing about her, and Anastasia didn't need to say a word to make that happen. That just shows you that Miss World lost.
You can't imagine what I've been through. I'm dying to get out of here. 2 days left, 2 more days left. I just have to bite my teeth through this. Best thing in the pageant is the girls.
The pageant organized us to go to New York City. I knew that there was a huge billboard in Times Square with my picture on it.
Our bus passed in front of it. All the girls on the bus were screaming, Miss Canada, you're on Times Square. You're on this big, huge billboard. Why? And I didn't even know if I could say why. I didn't know if I could tell them. I wish they can just read like the sign beside it, victim of communism. But I couldn't say, because we were on the bus and there were a lot of people around. And then Julia Morley started to ask me, what was that sign in Times Square about? The first thing came to mind was, I'm a victim of communism. And she said, well, we're all a victim of something. At that moment, I start to put everything together and think maybe I was a little too naive. It's going to be broadcast into China. Their media partners is Chinese. On their website, all the sponsors are Chinese. What am I thinking? With the Miss World organization, let me get to a microphone. I've been thinking about that. I'm losing hope a little bit. I can't wait to be out of here. Like, honestly, like, at this point, I don't even want the crown anymore.
I don't want what I have experienced in 22 days to expand to a year. I was just gonna try my best, do what's true to my conscience, and whatever the result is, doesn't matter anymore. In the final, when they called the top 20, Canada was not called, and I wasn't surprised at all. Because by that time, if I still didn't pick up the signs, that would just be stupid. I did not even get close to the camera. I was always on the side of the stage. I realized that this Miss World journey is over. This is the last pageant I will ever enter.
Puerto Rico!
Well, the pageant ended and I got off the stage. We're inside the theater. There were a lot of people. There were cameras. Media was there.
Finally, I got on the stage this time, and with no visa problem, apparently. And I will never give up.
I was really encouraged. I feel like they're not taking pictures with the beauty queen. They're taking pictures with me.
that phase of my life is finally over. Freedom! That's awesome. I can talk to media without asking for permission. I have journalist friends, like a few of them sending me telling me things like the only microphone they can keep you away from is their own. I did what I came here to do. I just want to go home. I'm definitely not the same woman as when I started. I'm totally cured from pageant. I've learned so much, and I'm so looking forward to the new chapter. I feel like I can feel happy with what I have accomplished. Still the best dress in the pageant, babe.
For her, this was never about the crown. It was about the message. And it was about her values and the values that are being crushed in China. Has she won? Absolutely.
I'm totally retired, so this is my celebration.
She's made her name in being someone who's outspoken, who has given herself gravitas, and almost made a farce out of this idea of beauty with purpose that Miss World advances.
Beauty Queen Diet 101. Cupcake.
The quandary that China has is really interesting. In a way, they've given Anastasia asymmetrical power. In doing so, as setting her up as this sort of larger-than-life rebel, they've created their own monster.
It's awesome.
I think Anastasia won. She entered the competition to gain a platform and a voice to speak on behalf of the suffering people of China. And she achieved that.
For human rights types like me, she's an answer to a prayer.
I'm totally ready to move into the real world now. They're just awesome.
I think most people before viewed Chinese human rights as a Chinese problem, simply only a Chinese problem that the world has no business asking about. But here comes this young woman who just changed the conversation.
You don't need to be Miss World to be able to have the world hear you. I wouldn't trade my experience for anything in the world. I actually don't need a platform. I can speak and people will hear, and that goes for everyone. They have the power within them. If you want to do something, you can start now and the world will hear you. I don't think I'll ever have a cup of tea again without thinking about my father being, as they say, invited to tea by security forces. Even this simple pleasure has been changed forever for me by this Chinese power play. When people my age ask me what power we have, I remind them that our generation has incredible power to make real impact. So I want to share an idea with you. The other day, sitting in a coffee shop, I realized what a difference we've all made in the world by choosing to buy fair trade coffee. We've essentially voted for ethical coffee harvesting with our wallets. So, why not apply the same idea to communicating with China? Let's let China know that we can't be bought like the Miss World organization, that we won't endorse their human rights violations with our wallets, that each of us has a choice. And until China starts to treat their own people better, we'll choose to spend our money elsewhere. Let your voice be heard with what I am calling Turn It Over. Here's my contribution. Okay, let's see if any of these mugs are made in China. Made in China. When it says made in China, like this one, can we guarantee that it was not made in a labor camp? Majority of the people in labor camps are prisoners of conscience. This one is made in USA, made in Brazil. So we have all these choices. We can choose products that are made in a democratic country, a free country where we know that the possibility of slave labor and forced labor is small, slim. This one is made in Brazil. Think before you choose a product. You might be surprised.
It's okay. Made in England.